Well, welcome. So I first want to just say hi to our Bay community population. This is not, it's live for Katie and I, but we'll post this later on Facebook for people to watch and on our YouTube page. This is part of our parenting and mental health series. And so Katie Moore, I really appreciate you doing this for us. Katie is a parent of four.
Yeah.
From and is a South County resident. And so as a mother and working full time and having four kids, I thought she was a prime candidate to talk a little bit about what it's like to be a parent in this world and the challenges with her own mental health and mental health of her children and friends and all of the above. So, Katie, welcome, and thank you so much for joining us. Maybe you
Thank
can
you.
tell us a little bit about, what's the parenting journey been like for you?
Oh, it's been an adventure. Yes. Yes. Well, now my oldest is 19. She just turned 19. So it
Wow.
evolved. Yeah. Then I have a 16-year-old and my twins are 14. But so when they were born, though, I had a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. So it's like that's the adventure, and sometimes you go for three, but you get a bonus. And I was like, you think you're ready for the third, and then we found out there was a fourth. We're walking to the elevator and it was like, oh wait, we need another car seat. Oh wait, we need a bigger car. Like they won't all fit. Like I think our
Right.
house is too small. You kind of just go through the motions. Like, oh, we need another crib. You kind of start spiraling. I always wanted twins, but I thought I'd have them first, not last. So it's definitely it's been fun, and it's evolved. I'm a single mom of four now, so that's been a journey in itself, and navigating that, and working real estate full time is a lot as well, but we're all just out there trying to do the best that we can.
I agree. And I say that a lot to the clients, patients that I see that, especially the parents that, always remember that you're doing the best you can with what you have in that time. And so, I get a lot of people in my office that haven't forgiven themselves for something that, happened like 20 years ago, even. And they're still frustrated by, maybe a mistake that they made or what have you. And on the discussion of mistakes, because I know, so a little known secret for the folks that are out there too, Katie and I grew up in the same town. So I have known her for a really, really long time, and we both ended up just serendipitously being both in South County. So it's been nice to reconnect and see an old friend be so successful, and now I get to interview her, so it feels extra special. But
Right
yeah,
back at you.
thanks.
Yeah.
So, related to mistake making, right? So I mean, how do you handle that, or how have you handled that with your kids, and how is that different than how it was for you when you were growing up?
Well, I always say, there's people who say like failing is not an option. And I couldn't disagree with that more. To me, like failing sometimes is your only option. You just keep failing again and again and again. Just keep
And
failing forward. Keep failing forward. You either you have to just learn from it. It's like, oh, that happens. And I feel like we fail every single day. And the thing is too, we have to teach our kids that they're allowed to fail. We're all human. We all make mistakes. Like the fact that we think that somehow that we're going to have it figured out at any point in time is just like mind blowing. Like, no, we don't have to actually have it figured out. And nor should we ever expect our kids to either. And I think we live in this social media world where we see this perfect lens on everything. And you think everyone is living their best lives because we only see the highlight reel. No one is really saying, the real deal of this is what I really messed up today. This was a huge mistake, or maybe you do, but it's like for laughs, like you see more of that. But yeah, so it's different. I think parenting now has a lot more pressure to it than when we were growing up. And that's a hard, but I do think I grew up in a house like we could make mistakes to an extent, you know, and learn from them. There just wasn't as much, I feel like, society pressure on that. So I think the best thing we can do often is just to give ourselves grace in this parenting journey.
Yeah, I think that's a great answer. And what I heard you say a couple times, and I love the phrase of fail forward.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. I remember growing up and failure was kind of like something I wasn't allowed to do, right? But I still did it, and then I just felt really, really bad about it, right?
Yes.
And it kind of
Yes.
affected me to my core. It took
Mhm.
away from my self-confidence and all these
Yes.
other things.
Yes.
And yeah, and you're right. And we didn't have all the social media back then, right? It was
Yeah.
like we were blaming like magazine covers for
Yeah.
that. And
Right. Right.
right.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
now kids out there have so much more of this kind of, false sense of perfection. Um,
Yes. Completely. Completely. And you're
yeah.
right. And I feel like too, we weren't allowed to quit when we were kids, at least at my house too. Like there was
Yeah.
not no quitting. You know, you hate that, it doesn't matter. You're gonna keep going. It doesn't matter like if whether it was eating everything on your plate or whether it was a sport or whether a job. I remember you'll know this place, but I had a job at the Elkton Diner working the night shift. So I worked from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. because I didn't have a car. And so it was the only way I could do it like around my parents' schedule to get their car. And my dad did not want me to quit. I was like, do you want me to be the and there's dignity in all jobs. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with being the night waitress, but he did not let me quit. And I'm like, well, eventually I'm gonna leave Elkton, you know.
How old were
He's like,
you when you
no,
took that? How old were you with that
I
job?
was 18. I was
Oh my
18
gosh.
and I was, yeah, so I just finished my freshman year of college. So I ended up going there to the beach. I ended up putting the I went to Ocean City. I did quit that job and he was so mad. But you know what? Whatever. It's okay. We're fine now.
That's so
But
funny.
yeah, but I know what you're saying. Yeah, like mistakes, quitting, all of that. Yeah, it's just a different space. Yeah,
Oh
for
my
sure.
gosh. Yeah, I mean, I remember getting a B on something
Oh,
and
yeah.
bawling.
Yeah.
And for a lot of people, that's like, oh, you got to be. I'm like, no, you don't understand. Like, I went home and I remember my mom distinctly like telling me, we don't get B's in this house. I'm like, wait, what? I also had the phrase, my mom sounds horrible and she's a lovely person, but the other thing she also told me, and this was in first grade, I remember there was this class that we took in first
Mhm.
grade and they were teaching us about feelings, right? So for those of you, if you haven't figured out, it was a really long time ago that I was in elementary school. And this was back when
Not
they
that
didn't really talk about feelings. Like the
long.
closest we got to that was like Sesame Street and whatever it was that like the public television stuff was as close as we
Yeah.
got to like, school counselors talking about feelings with us. But they had this whole campaign of like, it's okay to cry. So I came home and I don't know, I cried over something silly. And I remember my mom telling me, like, we don't cry in this house, like, unless you're
Oh,
dying or you're mortally wounded. And I was like,
wow. You bury, you avoid, bury, conceal.
right. And then,
Bury it.
and then that comes back. Yeah, you just said it.
Oh my
It was so
God.
funny because that came back around in the Frozen
Yes.
movies. And I think I bawled my eyes out during those movies because
Oh,
I was like, whoa, that hit really close to home. Like, yeah, I wasn't allowed to
wow.
have any feelings.
Wow.
Um, anyway, so we're, burying our childhood memories, but
Yes.
um I put them out there just because
Yeah.
I think it normalizes it for people. And what I see a lot of are parents that think it's better to I know you said I could talk about it. I've been through a divorce and I was fortunate enough to get through a divorce without children. I know, unfortunately, you were not that fortunate and that you had kids around when you went through a divorce. And I can only imagine how tough that was. And what I see a lot with my adult clients of kids going through a divorce is the hiding of emotion. And I don't mean like, you have grand fights in front of your kids and it's over the
Yeah.
top, but not expressing any emotion during this really hard time.
Yeah.
And I wonder if you could talk to that at all and what
Yeah.
that battle might have even been like for you to like
Yeah.
decide what made more sense or what,
Yeah.
in hindsight felt like the right thing to do or not, or
Yeah. So at that time too, I probably Googled about 20 times signs that you should get a divorce. which that in itself is
Yeah.
the, if you're Googling it that much, you actually already know what to do. You're just wanting someone else to say it's okay. But to give you a permission
Yeah.
slip, like you're allowed to do this. You're allowed to shake your life. You're allowed to change. If you're, deeply unhappy, you can change that. And and there's no permission slip out there. Trust me, I've looked. And one of the things that really resonated with me in one of these articles was that please stop wishing for nature to do the thing that you don't have the courage to do. And because a lot of times you're like, maybe this person, this sounds terrible. Maybe this
Yeah.
person will
Have a heart attack,
suddenly pass
right?
away.
Yeah.
Exactly. This sounds horrible to say out loud, but it's true. You're kind of like, maybe that'll happen. But you're like, well, what if they live to 100? What if nature's like, actually, joke's on you, girl. You should have done it when you were 35. So that in itself is the thing. And it was hard. It was a very hard process. It's something you don't wish on anybody, whether you have kids or not. It's a hard thing. No one
I
gets married
agree.
hoping that they're going to get a divorce. That's not in the cards. That's not like on the registry, like for life goals. So obviously I feel I have such empathy for anyone who decides to go through a divorce, because it's not an easy process. And sometimes it can be years in the making for that to happen. And,
Yes.
and then it's sometimes the years of the healing after, it can be very intense as well. So it's just like, I just say, just keep doing the next right hard thing, just again and again and again. Just the next, because if you looked at the whole process, more people would probably stay because it's so hard to leave. However, though, if you just look at just the next thing, just like this small thing that I'm going to do today to, and then you also have to think about, what does your future look like? What do you want that to look like? If you do have kids involved, how do you want to be perceived by them? What does it look like if I stay? What does it look like if I go? What do I teach them? There's this huge myth that like you should stay together for your kids, which is just absolutely not true. I did have someone say to me that you're going to shatter your kids if you leave. And I thought, well, what am I teaching them if I stay? I'm going to shatter them more if I stay. That can do just as much damage, if not more, typically, for them to see an unhealthy love. So it's just like, no, so it's just like following the path and just following your gut again and again.
Wow. So thank you for being so honest
Yeah.
with that. I commend you, commend your
Mhm.
courage.
Mhm.
So many things that you said are things that I want to really highlight. And one is trusting your gut, right?
Mhm.
And that aspect of just doing the next, really hard, but what feels right thing. It can be really small, and again, that's another Frozen reference. So we're going for it there.
Good. Hashtag not an ad.
I know we have no
So
affiliation
they
with
could be
Disney,
a sponsor. That would be
but
great.
but if, that would be great. Yeah. Um, and another thing that you pointed out, which I think is so, so important to point out. Someone told me this a long time ago, and they said, kids are actually really amazing observers, but they're horrible interpreters. And what that means is that, when you're sad, they can feel it. And they might think it's their own sadness. That's the bad interpretation, or they think it's their fault. And oftentimes I get parents, or families or kids of divorce, or they're going through it. And you're right. They have these two parents that fight all the time, and they see this expression. Yeah, maybe it's good to show a kid how to argue respectfully. But usually when you're on the path for divorce, there's no more respect going on. And so you're not teaching them how to handle conflict in a healthy way, right? And to stay in it, you're kind of saying, well, and I've had several adults in my office before that talk about the years that they spent in self-loathing and basically giving up of themselves just to stay in the marriage because they thought that was what was right for their kids, and finding out from their adult kids, like, I wished you had left, so, mom, dad, 20 years ago. Because I knew that you were fighting. I knew that this was going on. And these parents are just blown away by the fact that their kids were aware of it this whole time. And you're right. And they didn't leave when they were 30 or 35. They waited until they were 55 or 60.
Yeah. Right.
So yeah, I think that's so important.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
think I remember saying to my own parents, I don't think anyone thinks it's the right thing to just be miserable for the rest of my life. Like that doesn't sound like that's my life's purpose. And
Right.
I'm miserable right now. So I will try to heal myself, but if that means leaving this other person and separating and uncoupling, whatever you want to call it,
Right.
divorcing, then that
Right.
seems more right than me being miserable. So I really commend you for saying that. And because I know culturally that's not what people hear, even though, 50% of
Right.
people get divorced, but yet
Right.
there's such a
Right.
stigma when you're
Yeah.
going through it.
Absolutely. There really is. And I actually have a post-it note that I keep in my closet so I can see it every day. And it says, at the end of the day, I am the only one who can give my children a happy mother who loves life. And that to me is like just the point blank of it, And so whatever that looks like for me, and that's the thing, like, because you care so much about the narratives of other people and you're letting people down and, oh, it's not going to be this perfect Christmas card or social media posts or whatever ridiculousness that we get so caught up in, at the end of the day, it actually just matters. Me and my kids are what matter the most, like I know I'm doing what's right by them, and teaching them this other path. So yeah, it's so true. Just yeah, just following it every step of the way of what you actually know in your soul of what is right.
That's awesome. Yeah, I just love that, following your intuition, your gut, and really
Mhm.
listening to it. And you also
Yeah.
bring up something else, you're the only one that can, be that happy mom that loves life and model that for your kids. And so,
Yeah.
we all have different relationships with our children. I wondered
Mhm.
if you wanted to talk a little bit about how your relationship with your children has evolved over the years and how maybe communication styles have changed. So just so you know, in part of the series, early on, I spent a lot of time doing a lot of research on parenting.
Mhm.
And partially for my, what I do in the world of psychology, but also because I am one. So I'm very curious
Right.
about, trying to do the right things, or maybe
Yeah.
when I can't figure it out, like you did, all the articles you read, same thing. So
Mhm.
I've been trying to pass that on in the series. And one
Yeah.
of the things we started out with was talking about parenting styles. And we talked
Mhm.
about authoritative versus authoritarian, right? So
Mhm.
authoritarian's more like do as I say, not as I do, like
Mhm.
authoritative is just setting clear boundaries, right? And so there's like parenting
Yeah.
styles, and then we talked about not what we call nonviolent communication, which I'm not a huge fan of the title, but it basically means communicating with people without judgment and criticism, which, as you can
Mm.
imagine, in my field, we have to do a lot of
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
and get
Yeah.
pretty good at it. So I felt like passing that on, and I realized I started using it with my kids in the shift that I had. Um,
Mm.
Anyway, so I'm just
Yeah.
curious though for you, because your kids are older than mine, and how has communication and your relationship shifted with your kids as they've gotten older, and how you communicate,
Yeah.
and what do you have to share with that in mind?
Sure. Yeah, see, here's the 19-year-old texting me right now. They need you forever. Forever. They have, yeah, don't think that they leave and that's it. See, she's still I need a sign, so sorry. The
That's okay.
but, so I would say, it's not a one size fits all and it's ever evolving. Sorry, let me silence this. So it's just like I feel too that I have to be a different parent for each one of my kids. What will work in a disciplinarian way on one of them will not work on the other one. So it's just
So
knowing
true.
them so well. You know them and you know what they'll react to. And some will cry much easier than others. And some it's like, my God, help me out. Give me a bone. What will get through the wall? Um, and as they get older, so when they're young it's so much just building the foundation, right? And all these things, and you think, am I doing this right? Am I, but it all matters. All of those roots of you reminding them to use their manners, and be good people when they're young matters, because you will see that a lot in high school, and teenagers, of kids that were not told no. You can see that very much so, and a certain amount of entitlement that exists. So it's like, then as they're older, I've just like, I want them though to, that they know they can call me if they need something. They can text me, and I don't want them to ever think, oh, my mom will kill me if she catches me doing this. I'm not going to ever kill them for doing, I will pick you up. I will pick your friends up. And when they're young, it's so hard to even think like that, and like, oh, that won't be my kid or that, but it's almost just giving them this safety net though, that you have their back, that you will be in their corner, not that you'll take it over. It's also to giving them the tools to be their own advocates. Like, to me too, like there's something with the teacher. This actually very much even when they were in COVID, which my twins like were in fifth grade at that point, but it's still like, okay, well, if you're not doing well on something, you need to email that teacher, and let them, like, is there a way that I could get extra help? Like, you even when they're young, they can do that. When they're young, they can still do chores. It's like all of these things. They're going to probably raise their kids and do all their laundry till they're 25. But like all my kids, like, but my kids have been doing it for a long time, because I think there's important life skills, in doing that. And I want them to always be the type of people who can stand on their own 2 feet. So that if something were to happen, if they choose to, get married or have a partner, that they aren't relying on them to do certain things, that they know how to do all of it, male or female. So it's just like getting them to certain points. So they'll be able to fly too. Once they
Yeah.
graduate high school, that they can fly.
And I think something that they actually teach to teachers, it's this like, X+1 kind of model or theory or a knowledge skills balance or challenge skills balance, right? Where you basically, depending on their age, push them just a little bit more, but it's
Right.
something they can do, right? So like really young kids, maybe it's just picking up their toys and putting them
Yes.
in a bin, but then they get a
Mhm.
little bit older, they can maybe making their bed is just pulling their sheets up, right? And they're throwing their comforter over their bed. It doesn't need to be perfectly made, bounce a quarter off of it kind of thing.
Yeah.
And you just keep challenging them a little bit more to do things that make them self-sufficient. I really love that.
Yeah.
And it's as if you knew what I've been talking about the last week, and then this coming week, this week in our session tonight is going to talk a little bit about fear-based parenting in honor of Halloween, of course.
Yes.
And we've all been there. We've all parented out of fear,
Mm,
or exhaustion, or being overwhelmed, and fear tends to lead, right? Like, don't do
right.
that or you'll get in trouble, right?
Right. Right.
And kind of showing folks the research that that's really not going to help your kid grow confidence. In fact, it does quite the opposite, right? It makes them very insecure and very anxious and scared to do things and scared to fail forward, right? So it sounds like you're really holding true to all these amazing theories that are showing that you grow these autonomous children that do well. So related to that, I mean, is there a golden rule or something that you feel like you would, if people left with anything today,
Yeah.
they would leave with this one thing from parenting that you've kind of gathered over the years, now that you have an adult child, which much
Oh gosh.
I know.
Adulted.
Sorry, I had
Adulted.
to do it.
No,
You
it's
can have
okay.
me back in a few years when I have an adult child and be like, haha, you're there
It's
too.
okay. And you'll be like, oh, they're actually not. Like, age is just a number. Yes. um yes, so probably my golden rule from even when my kids were young, was be the kid that gets invited back. So it's
Love
like,
that.
be the good, be the good kid, that you're low maintenance. You're not asking for a lot, you're using good manners, be that, and you show up for that in honestly every aspect of your life. That's how you can be a great student, that's how you can be a great employee. Like, try to be the best employee that you can be, and then you will always be employed, and then you will always be a good student, because then teachers will respect you. It's respect is this two-way street. And same thing even with parents. Like, when my kids were little, it was like, some of these kids would be so high maintenance, and I'm like, oh, this will be a one and done. This is not, one and done play date. This is not, you got to make my life easier, not harder. And so I want them to be like that. And now probably to this day, they're like scared to ask, for anything if they go anywhere because they want to be like super low maintenance. But that's okay. I'd rather them be that way. Like if you know where the cups are, don't be asking that mom for anything. So
Absolutely, absolutely. And
yeah.
sometimes, when they're younger, I find a lot of parents fall into the trap of, well, it's just easier for me to do it rather than to teach my kid how to do it,
Oh, yes, don't
right?
do that. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I've seen, I mean, and it starts as early as being a baby, and like the baby sleeps in bed with
absolutely.
you because it's so much easier. And you're like, no, they've got, I mean, I remember one time when I forget which child was, still in a crib, and it was my
Yeah.
mom that was like, I think it was my daughter, and does she have a clean diaper on? Yes. Has she been fed recently? Yes. Has she slept recently? Yes. Like, does she have a fever? No. Okay, she's fine in the crib. Let her cry. It's exercise for her. Like it was,
Mhm.
and part of me felt like that was so harsh, and I had to get over it and realize, okay, she's safe, and I need to take care of my own mental health, my own self-care for a few minutes and
Yes.
just let it. And
Yeah.
so with that in
Right.
mind, I mean, what are some things that you feel like, did you figure out things that really helped fill your cup up and gave
Mm.
yourself that self-care over the years that kept you being an amazing mom? I mean, what worked for
Yeah, I
you?
mean, yes. So we're all just trying, right? And every day is just right, trying to do the best that we can do. So, but I try to always start my day with meditation, even if it's for like a couple of minutes, but just remembering to breathe is huge. And I know it's probably like over so like, oh, people are like tired of hearing that, but it's like there's a reason for it. To me, it just centers my day, and then like affirmations. I try to move my body in some way, whether it's yoga or lifting weights or whatever, just something that to me just kind of starts endorphins. And then it's before life and work and everything else. And it maybe like kid demands, whatever it is, texts, phone calls, emails, just being there, just showing up for you, like no phone, just being plugged in right there for you. And then I always try to end my day with some type of gratitude and just saying, oh, grateful for this. Um, I actually got my yoga certification about 16 years ago. And it just really resonated with me. Our instructor had said, what really matters for a yoga class is the first 5 minutes and the last 5 minutes. But I feel like a lot of life is like that. Like the middle can get really messy of that. But as long as you've got the first 5 minutes and the last 5 minutes, especially like to me, that's my time for me. That's like how I refill. It's like because as your kids get older too, they stay up really late. And that's hard. And so, but you have to almost all the more be like, oh, I still need to date myself. I still need to be in touch with me and what I need, too. So just listening to that voice too of like, what do I really need today?
I love that. And I love that statement of, I really need to date myself, right? And it's
Hmm.
so key to remember that, that self-love is so important, and that's going to resonate so well with your kids almost more than anything else. Because if you love yourself in a caring way, right? Not in a
Yeah,
narcissistic way, because that's not really self-love, as we know,
right,
um
right. Yeah.
but if you have that self-love and you take care of yourself, your kids will see that and want to emulate that because they see the
Yeah.
goodness that comes out of that. Yeah, that's funny. We definitely had similar paths. I also went and got my yoga certification. I guess mine was about 12
Funny.
years ago. So
Oh
it's
my
so funny.
gosh.
Yeah.
We could do a class.
Another time, baby. Yeah.
Yes. Right
But
in all of our free time. Yes.
right, exactly. Yeah, speaking of which, so I also know you have some of these amazing hobbies that I don't want to let you leave this call without bringing up. So one thing that I found out through Katie, that is, she's an author, and
Yeah.
she's a, motivational, and she does all these other things besides being, oh my gosh, being a real estate agent. So tell me
Yes.
about your new book and what it's all about, and yeah, share.
Oh, yes. I know. I have to bring you a copy. But so this is Sugar Mama Mindset. I wrote a girl power book before. So it's over on the side, but it's slightly it's mother beeping girl power is like the first one. And this one's kind of like the wise aunt who like slips you a 20 and is like, don't settle. That's what this book is. And it's just really quick. And this is something too, like actually on my yoga mat and even like on my Instagram too, I post one every day because they're just like quick little, things of like, what do I need to read today? What do I need to hear today? So just, but this one is really about mindset and a few years ago, I was just in a mentally not as great space, and I really had to pull myself together. And the way I did it was through mindset of just like, okay, that positive self-talk and believing in yourself and having confidence, to slay your own dragons is really what this one's about.
Awesome. Well,
Yeah,
congratulations.
but
Yeah, definitely. You're
thanks.
definitely slaying dragons over there.
That's
Um,
right.
and yeah, mindset's so key. It's interesting.
Yeah.
I started with a background in neuroscience, and
Uh,
back when
impressive.
dragons and dinosaurs walked the earth, we thought our brain was much more static than it is. And now it's so cool to finally see the research catch up to what, Eastern science is known for millennia, is that
Yeah.
our brains are very plastic, and we can actually change our brains through our conscious thoughts, and that shifts our unconscious mind, right? So those affirmations, even though you don't believe them at first, it's that back to that, like, fake it till you make it, and
Yes.
really finding ways to believe in yourself and grounding
Mhm.
yourself. It's just amazing. So thanks for
Yeah.
giving us that reminder.
Absolutely. Thank you. And
So,
how impressive are you? Look us, yeah, we grew up in this teeny tiny little town. And look at you. You're slaying dragons left and right too. So
oh,
that's
thank you. Thank you. I did not pay for that promotion, just fair. But
it's
yeah, so
true. It makes me
Katie,
so proud.
yeah, it is. It's nice to see people from our little,
Yeah.
we didn't grow up in South County, but we grew up in a very
Yeah.
tiny rural area, not
Mhm.
unlike South County, just
Yes.
not nearly as close to any sort of city. When
No.
we grew up, it took an hour to get to the movies. I remember that, or
Yes.
to a
Yes.
mall.
Or to a mall.
Um, yep.
Yes.
So
Yes.
everything was really far away.
Yes.
But yeah, Katie, I just can't thank you enough for sharing your time. I mean, I think for the folks out there, the things I'm taking away from this amazing conversation with one of our local moms and one of our local professionals and author, and the list goes on, yoga teacher, meditation teacher, it goes on, dragon slayer,
Dragon Slayer.
is that, to always remember that there's no such thing as a failure, right? It's just a learning opportunity, and that when you learn from something, it's you're going forward, and so always being there, and then always remembering to trust your instincts and to love yourself, to date yourself, and make that part of your mantra, because that speaks
Yeah.
volumes to your kids.
Yeah.
And I think some of those things, and so that means taking care of our own mental health first. In some cases, I tell a lot of folks, putting the oxygen mask on yourself first, and then
Yes.
you're able to help others.
Yeah.
And
100%.
yeah, and then as a parent, again, that validation of allowing your kids a little autonomy, right? Giving them a chance to succeed by pushing them to do chores and do things on their
Yeah.
own and be independent. And that will hopefully make them more independent later in life. So much sage wisdom has come from you
Oh,
today. And I so appreciate it. And I have to admit to everyone, I kind of like cornered Katie. I saw her out in South County. I'm like, hey, can we do this? And she didn't
absolutely.
skip a beat. She
Yeah.
immediately said yes. And so I'm just so grateful to you. I'm so grateful that you've raised some amazing children,
Oh,
and
thank
just
you.
keep slaying dragons, girl.